Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to find these zeros on your graphing calculator using the graph function. So first thing we want to do is we want to go to the y equals button on the top left column, hit that, and in y1 is where we're going to put our equation. So for example, I'm just going to do an easy equation. Let's do 2x, and if you want to do the x button, it is this x t theta n, and that will give you an x in your equation. If we square it, we're going to use this x squared button. You can also use this caret button, and that will also do an exponent that you can then plug in. So I have 2x squared, I'll do plus 5x, and then I'll do minus 3. Okay, so that's just a random equation I made up, and we're going to graph that and see if we can find the zeros. So I'm going to go over here to my graph function. All right, so now we see our graph. Obviously, my graph is pretty good on my screen. I can see both points that I need to find. If for any reason your graph is not visible on your screen, you can either use the zoom format, the zoom button. You can use zoom out if you need to zoom out, zoom in if you need to zoom in. And every now and then, if you're not really sure how to zoom it to make it work, zoom fit is also a good choice. And it'll kind of do a best guess of what you're looking for and show you what it thinks the best fit would be. Now, as you can see, it's changed it to where I can still see my zeros, but I would like to see a little bit more there. So what we can actually do is we can go to this window button. If I hit that window button, you can see that the graph starts my x values at -10, and it ends my x values at +10. Each tick on my graph is 1 unit. My y-min is -6, and obviously I wanted to go a little bit further down on my y-minimum, so I'm actually going to make that, let's make it -10 and see how that does. And it says my y-max is 247, so that's kind of big. Maybe I can try 150. Cap it off at 150, and we'll see how that looks. So I'm going to graph that. And that looks a little bit better. Obviously, I didn't go quite as far as I wanted to on my y-axis, so I can go back again. Go to my windows. This time, let's do -100. I think if I did that, it'll really give me a good view of what my graph looks like. So I'm changing my y-minimum, and now I can definitely see my graph very well. Obviously, I didn't have to do that from the beginning because from the beginning, it was already pretty visible, but I just wanted to make sure you guys saw how to fix it if you needed to fix it, okay? So next, what we want to do to find these 0 points, there's multiple ways to do this. My personal preference is to go to the calculate button, which is in blue. So I'm going to hit second and then calculate. And I'm going to try and calculate a 0. So I'm going to go down to option number 2. And when I'm calculating a 0, it's going to give me boundary options. So left bound, I'm going to move my cursor to the left of the 0 I want to find. So I want to find my 0 that's all the way to the left. So I want to find my x value where my function crosses this x-axis. So for my left bound, I'm going to make sure my cursor is to the left of that point. I'm going to hit enter, and that'll put a left bound on there. And then I'm going to move my cursor to the right of that point. So just anywhere to the right, not going past the next one. So it's to the right of that point now, and then I'm going to hit enter again. I've got my bounds. I can see that my 0 is well within both of those bounds. And when I hit enter again, it is going to tell me my 0 value. So if you see a y value that looks like this, that is okay. Essentially, it just means that your y value is so small, it essentially equates to 0. So don't worry too much if you see that e to the -12 or any other number you might see there. As long as it's that e to the -12 or e to the negative some number, you're okay. But this is the number we're really looking for. So x equals -3. That is one of our zeros for this particular graph. If we want to find the other one, we can do the exact same thing. So second, calculate, and I'm going to scroll down to 0 again. So I'm going to find my next 0. We found this one, now I want to find this one. So I'm going to scroll to the left of that bound and hit enter. I'm going to scroll to the right of that 0 and hit enter. So now I have my boundary lines up. My 0 is in between those two boundary lines with no other zeros in between it. I hit enter again. See, now I have that y value of 0, which is good. And this time it gives me an x value of 0.5, which is 1/2. So now I know that my two zeros for this graph are -3 and 1/2, or -3 and 0.5. All right, so that's one way to find your zeros. You can also try using the table. So if I want to go to second table, it will give me a list of points like this. As you can see, right now we only go from x equals -2 downwards. So if you want to go before that, because our x value for this one was at -3, then we're going to need to fix our table set. So I'm going to go to second, and that little window button above it says table set. And that table start is where our table is going to start. So I'm going to do -10 instead of -2. And I'm going to keep everything else the same. And then I'll do second table to go back to my table. And now you can see that I have a 0 at -3. So that's really helpful as well if you have whole numbers and if you have a general idea of where they might be in your table. But if you notice, we don't have that 0.5 option because all of these are whole numbers for our x values. Now we could change that if we go back to our second table set. And if our change in the table, if we wanted to include decimals, so like a half unit, I could always do 0.5 and then do my table. And it would then do every half unit as a point. So then you can see we do have a point at -30. And if I scroll down, we might also see that other 0, there it is, at 0.5. But the only reason I knew to do 0.5 was because I actually found it on the graph first and knew that I would have to use that 0.5 decimal. So that's where the table is a little bit trickier, is that you kind of have to know where your points are in a general sense. Otherwise, that calculate button is going to be a good tool. You can also use just the trace button if you wanted to use trace, but again, it's not 100% precise because we can scroll to the left and right, and unless you, so let's see. So if you know, we had that point at 0.5, and I'm getting something around 0.45 for my x, but then the next time I click over, it's 0.6. So it's not super helpful unless you're just looking for a general idea of where it is. So again, this one, it ends up being at -3.03 and y equals 0.21. So again, not super helpful, but every now and then that trace button might be helpful. So just to review, second, calculate, go to 0, hit enter, and then use those bounds, and then that should definitely give you what you need. If you have any questions, please let me know, and have a good rest of your day.